After having taken an overview of the three groups of theories, we will now begin to look at each one in more detail, and we will also look at different theorists under each of these groups of theories. Let's begin with behaviorism, and we will be looking at the works of 5 different theories here. Now, just because these theorists are grouped together does not necessarily mean that they all did the same thing or their theories tell us the same thing. In fact, each theory tells us a different thing about behaviors, and that is why it is important to look at multiple theories to get different perspectives of a particular behavior in terms of why, how, and what people do. So let's begin by looking at Thorndike. Thorndike's major work had to do with connections, and that is why it is known as Connectionism. What students learn today must be connected in some way to what they did previously or what they are going to do in the future. In other words, they need to see how what they are learning today builds on what they already know or will benefit them in the future. If work is too simple or too complicated, the connection won't be made, and the effort and time will be lost. So, trying to make that connection, trying to help students see why this is important today based on either how it fits in at an upper level, looking at what they've already done, or how it is going to benefit them in the near or distant future. The second one is Pavlov and Watson. Both these individuals gave us classical conditioning. And classical conditioning simply means learning. You learn something, and in classical conditioning, individuals learn automatic responses. They are basic physiological or emotional responses that people show, but they are conditioned. They have learned it over time. When we look at Pavlov in more detail and we see his works, we will look at how this happens and what teachers can do in the classroom to help students condition appropriate behaviors. Pavlov and Watson both worked in classical conditioning. Skinner, on the other hand, went one step further and developed operant conditioning. In other words, operant conditioning has nothing to do with the normal physiological or emotional responses of individuals. These are totally unrelated behaviors that people learn because they are needed. It helps them succeed, but they are not normal bodily functions, and that is why they are operant conditioning. Operants can change, operants can be lost, can be gained, and when we look at Skinner, we will look at the differences there between how operants are gained, operants are lost. But for right now, simply understanding that operant conditioning is learning appropriate behaviors because I'm going to be rewarded, because I'm going to have something good happen to me, is critical, because unlike classical conditioning, where the response only is a basic physiological or emotional function. For example, stale food or a stink of the garbage gives you a feeling of nausea or vomiting, while roses don't give you that feeling. That's classical conditioning. Operant conditioning is learned behaviors that will help my life in the classroom, my life at home, become better because I have learned the appropriate behaviors and I use them appropriately. Bandura, on the other hand, looks at observable learning and modeling. Students learn from what they observe, what they see, and whatever they see, sometimes good, sometimes bad, they model, they imitate, they copy, and therefore it is important for teachers to understand why they need to be role models for their students. Gagne looked at hierarchical learning. Learning happens in a particular sequence, from simple to complex, from concrete to abstract, but in a hierarchical order. It must follow certain steps. And all these people talk about changing behaviors for the positive, for the constructive, for the better. And when behaviors change, learning happens.